Thank you. Wow, that was fabulous, Mark and Paul. Wonderful. So now we're going to continue with our guest speaker sharing some of his wisdom about Egypt and Egyptian mysticism. And Lyriel, that meditation was fabulous, a wonderful appetizer, prequel, whatever. So, yeah, thank you. So, Jim Phillips from South Bend, coming to share some wonderful stuff. So, okay, I think that's on. Is this on?
Are we on? Yep, sure sounds like it. Wow, I'm still into that music. I need to clear my head. That was magical. Well, first, thank you, Dallas, for inviting me back. The energy in this room and the energy in this church is amazing. This is my second visit, and I'm still blown away. The meditation brought back lots of beautiful memories for me. I've been to Egypt maybe 30 times in my life, maybe more. There was a period of my life where I went 3 or 4 times a year, maybe sometimes once a month through the 90s when I lived in Europe. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to some gentlemen who taught and ladies who taught at the American University in Cairo and ostensibly were Coptic Christians, but underneath they were really studying mysticism and the ancient Egyptian ways. And in an Islamic society, that wasn't exactly cool. So I was very fortunate for them that they introduced this to me. I guess the first place is just do a real quick introduction of myself so people know a little bit about my background. As I said, I've been to Egypt many times. I was taken under the wing of my mentor, who we will meet this afternoon. And every time I would go to Egypt, he'd say, okay, I want you to go to Wadi, spend 3 days, do this, this, and this. And I said, I don't want to do that. Okay, go do it anyway. And so I got a beautiful education through him. And then I came back to the States through a life change situation, moved back to Los Angeles and joined the Agape International Spiritual Truth Center. And Reverend Michael, anybody you know anything about him? Oh, okay. All right, good. And I took, all the foundation courses in science of the mind through that, obviously. So I have a little working background in that area. And while I lived in Europe, I also took Self-Realization Fellowship, Paramahansa Yogananda, and I was initiated in Kriya Yoga, which is their program. So I've had a little bit of that. And if any of you are aware of the Institute, Robert Monroe's Institute in Virginia, if anybody heard of that, is that new? Oh, good. Okay, I'm a graduate of that also. I mean, it just seems to be a subtext in my life to be a seeker. And basically the theme of the Monroe Institute is that you're more than your physical body. That's its theme line. And you explore that at the Institute in different programs, that you are consciousness, not a physical body. So I guess that's pretty much my background. I'm a layman. I'm not professionally credited. I'm no PhD, none of that. So what we're going to do here in the few minutes during the service, I wanted to do a little bit of shameless selling for the lecture this afternoon and for the workshop next week, and then open it up to some questions if you'd like. And I could even show a little bit about my hero, Pharaoh Akhenaten and Queen Nefertiti, which is from the 3rd module of what we will do next Saturday. Next Saturday is a very deep dive into what it took to become a priestess of Isis and a priest of Amun thousands and thousands of years ago. You'll get the same, rather abbreviated, but training that you would have gotten 7 years in the ancient mysteries if you determined to come to the full workshop. This afternoon, I'm going to pull a little bit of a teaser, if you will, from Module 3 about Pharaoh Akhenaten and Nefertiti, because they're not as well known for their spiritual side as I would like them to be, frankly. What else? So the lecture, what we're going to do this afternoon basically is a combination of two things. I'm going to, as I said, take a deep dive into Akhenaten and Nefertiti and what they brought to our modern day religions. Sort of a classroomy kind of material. And then we'll mix in the heart meditation, which will last for 23 minutes so you can see what the culmination was of your training, which is what we do in the workshop. At the end of each year, those of you, are there any Reiki people in here, by the way? That would, oh, a pretty good bunch. Okay, well, Reiki people, Reiki masters use light energy, basically corresponding to the chakra system of the body. And we use that term from Oriental mysticism. The Egyptians, of course, back in the day didn't use the word chakra, but it's the same idea. And we are going to explore the heart chakra in the workshop, along with Pharaoh Akhenaten, in the lecture, this afternoon. In the workshop next Saturday, those that want to really dig deep into this, we will do 3 of the initiations that you would have received, similar to that you would have received in the temple system, for the root chakra, for the heart chakra, which we'll do a piece of today, and the crown chakra, which is the opening of the way, which allows you to expand your consciousness outside your physical body, okay? And do some of the magic that way. What else am I forgetting? I think that's enough of the shameless. Has anybody been to Egypt here besides this beautiful lady in her meditation? That was phenomenal. Anybody else been to Egypt here? Oh, good. Where did you go in Egypt, may I ask?
I saw the pyramids. I lived on a kibbutz in Israel, and I took a couple weekend trips down to Egypt and went to the pyramids.
Oh, good. Did you do it on your own, or did you have a guide?
I did it with other kibbutz volunteers who were mostly Europeans.
They hustle you to try to sell you some rugs and stuff? Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. They tell you 10,000 slaves built this?
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. That's the part that made me laugh. Yeah, right. Okay. Huh? No, it's not true. Cecil B. DeMille stuff is what it is. All right. Let me do a little bit then on Akhenaten, and then we'll have a little Q&A about. Make sure I get out of everybody's way. This is from the 3rd module, as I was saying. Multicolored pendants snap loudly in the breeze as you walk through the first pylon of the massive Karnak temple. The Karnak temple is so large they don't even know exactly where it began and ends. They think in the day 20,000 adepts and neophytes and people were employed at that Karnak temple. That's a lot of people. Dozens of adepts, sem priests, initiate trainees form a long corridor in the forecourt and greet you with laughter, clapping, and singing. Ahead is a lone figure, very tall, a very regal figure, wearing a blue and white striped royal nemes headcloth. That's the famous headcloth you've seen in Egyptian movies, covering up the hair. And a shendit linen kilt fastened at his waist. As you approach, Pharaoh Akhenaten opens the ancient wooden doors to the Holy of Holies, and with a knowing smile motions for you to begin your journey into the ageless and sacred wisdom of Egypt. I got that actually off of papyrus. I just thought that was pretty cool. Who was he? Pharaoh Akhenaten. What is Ankh in Mat, which translates loosely to living in truth? The playback of the imagination, which we are not going to do today, because you've already had a beautiful imagination, okay? That word imagination is a branding term I invented because in the temple system, those of you who have some sense of your earlier past lives, your training would have been in the form of creative visualization and to overcome your ego mind to say my imagination and my creative visualization combined can alter my reality. So I invented the branded term imaginization to describe that. Let me do that again. You guys are probably pretty hip to all that. Did you get it? Okay. And then the gift of Pharaoh Akhenaten. This, in essence, would be module 3 of our workshop next Saturday. Okay? I'm just going to give you a taste of it. This is Pharaoh Akhenaten. He's not so well known. People know the name. But when you think that there was 3,100 years of Egyptian history, 3,100 years of recorded history, and the only pharaoh we all know is the one that was crucified, if you want to look at it that way, and only had a 17-year rule. After all those other pharaohs, he's the one we know, and this is the reason why. And he lived in the 14th century before Christ. So 1,400 years before Christ, he was teaching the teachings that we call Christ consciousness today. So he invented a philosophy he called living in truth. And this statement from the hymn to the Aten, to give you the quick background on it, he was considered a heretic because he abolished all the state religions of his day, as if all the religions on earth were abolished by the central authority, and said, this is what we're going to practice now, which is self-realization of your own divinity and your own consciousness, and not be taught to follow some particular set of rules or guidance or chants or whatever, okay? And this came from his hymn to the Aten, which is because he lived in, frankly, an illiterate society. They were not very well educated. It was agrarian, and so very few people actually made it to school in their era. So he thought that he'd better create something, so he created a new, unseen God consciousness called the Aten, okay? And in the book, the hymn to the Aten, this is what he put as one of his poems. I've made no deceptions, I've told no lies. What my heart hated, I did not do. I am one with the invisible God that created me. I will live for millions of years in this truth. Pharaoh Akhenaten. There's a lot of really deep symbolism in those statements. No deceptions, no lies, not even white lies. What my heart hated, I did not do. I can't tell you how many things I've had to do in my life that I didn't want to do. The kind of work I've had to do for the man, if you want to look at it that way. And we all have this, because we live in a cultural society. I am one with the invisible God that created me. That's the higher level. And he will live for millions of years in this truth. This is what he looked like right there. And when you go into the Cairo Museum for the first, did you get a chance to go to the Cairo Museum in your trip? Oh, that's a shame. What about you? Did you get a chance? No? Okay. The Cairo Museum, which you saw during the riots that deposed their dictator, if you want to look at it that way, is on Tahrir Square. And the Egyptian Museum, when you come through the front door and go towards the Akhenaten room, this statue stands looking down at you from about the top of this room looking down. It is awesome. Even those eyes, the almond eyes, the nose, the depiction of him, you just, whew, like that. It's like he's there in that room. He dreamed of a world where individuals, am I blocking you, Ray? Can you see? I'm good. Okay. He dreamed of a world where individuals lived in peace and harmony, were equal under the law and served each other. That was his dream, what he tried to make Egypt become. his 8 million people, his America, if you will, he tried to bring them together to see themselves not in a partisan light, but in a unified light. He was a man with a mission of rare intelligence, deep perception, with a great sensitivity and a gift for words. And he possessed an intense desire for universal peace and understanding. That's pretty powerful stuff. I might mention this before I run away from it. How many times have you seen these in movies where the Pharaoh has got these things crossed? You ever wondered what it was? A lot of people do, and they don't. This was explained to me by my mentors. This is the staff, and that is the flail crossed over the heart. Because he's a spiritual leader, the staff represents, which 1,400 years later was used as a symbol in Christianity by the shepherds, the shepherd to the flock. The 8 million Egyptians in his time were his flock. He's a spiritual leader to help show them the path to live a life that was of a higher nature. Okay? So that represents the staff of a shepherd, the shepherd to his flock, to his people. And the flail, although it's been broken off, in third world countries, even today, they hook up a bull or a cattle to a plow, and the plow creates a furrow, and that's what they put the seeds in that'll grow the plant. And they use a whip above. They don't actually whip the animal, but they snap it when the animal moves off and starts to make a furrow that isn't straight. You with me? So the symbology of the flail there is to once again show you that there's a path for you to follow. Don't deviate from it. Don't do things that are not of your heart, not in love. Okay? It's getting a little deep into it, but that's the idea of when you've ever seen that. Now you know what it means. Crosses over the heart means love yourself and love others, and don't deviate from your personal path. How am I doing, Della? Tell me when I'm getting too close. Okay. His aim was to purify a way of life he believed had strayed far from its true course. And he did the equivalent of throwing out the moneylenders that we have from the Christian Bible in his time, 1,400 years earlier. Okay? And invented a spiritual philosophy he called Ankh in Mat, as he closed all the temples of the existing religions. He asked people to come back to the temples and practice something called living in truth, which is much like what we do here, to share energy and to share consciousness. And this survived and birthed Christianity, Judaism, Islam, well over 1,000 years after his time. Much of what he wrote, because he was just ahead of recorded history, he isn't considered to be a prophet in today's time, but he was. In fact, almost verbatim, one of his hymns in the Akhenaten appeared in the Christian Bible, which is really fascinating because when you talk to a fundamentalist in Christianity, and the word came from God, and if the word is from God, and man didn't alter it, and I said, well, that's exactly Akhenaten's words, and he was a man. How's this work? Out. You're done. In his temple's Akhenaten 17-year experiment, cosmic harmony was the model for earthly harmony. Intellectual life was present. Mental life was a reflection of the divine. And ascension was the most important ideal to strive for. Through the entire workshop, we're going to be talking about ascension, ascension, ascension. What does that mean? That means to be able to, at will, have the ability to have your consciousness expand outside your physical body. To ascend to a higher dimension. And then we will talk about what that higher dimension is. Actually, there are 7 dimensions altogether that match the 7 chakra system. As above, so below. One of the most famous axioms in all of Egyptian mysticism. as above as the whole universe, galaxies, get as big macro as you can think of, down to the human body. We are a reflection of the divine. To acquire knowledge was to observe the divine at work. All branches of learning were divine. Science was incorporated in the highest exaltation of knowledge, living in truth. Ankh in Mat. I think I'll cut it off after this one, okay? So, what he attempted to do was to create the world's first monotheistic state where each individual was encouraged to seek out ways to grow mind and spirit, practice justice and oppose injustice, gladly perform service to state and community, and live in peaceful and joyful harmony within the ordered whole. That's a big mouthful. And he didn't get it done either. 17 years later, his 1%ers did him in. Just as happens in America today. They recruited all the army, the heads of the army, and they finally forced him to abdicate. And from then on, we don't know. Well, ostensibly, we don't know what happened to him, but in the workshop, I'll be happy to go through it. I know a fair amount about that. Okay, I've done enough of the teaser of what we do in the third workshop. But I'd love to answer any questions if you have another few minutes, just to. Okay, that's it. I won't bore you anymore on Egypt. Does anybody have any questions about Egypt? Anything you'd like to know that I might be lucky enough to share? Yes.